Hello and welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm Jurjevich. Joining me tonight is the whole gang. Wayne Ridenauer in Memphis, Larry Gardner in Adairsville, and of course Todd Corder in the Woodstock area. You can catch us all at ATL Prime Sports, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and of course Apple and Spotify. Our personal X's at JJ Get You One for myself, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder, and at LG for Real though for Larry Gardner, the PA voice of the Rome Emperors. Larry, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Man, just glad to be back in the building with everybody on here, man. I'm just excited for all the new things that are coming. Football season already here, college football season around the corner, the playoff push in MLB. I'm just excited, man. A lot of things going down. But I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, man, it's exciting time of the year. Just like you said, Todd joining us this evening from Woodstock. How you doing, Todd?
Doing fantastic. I just can't believe the hypocrisy of the NCAA. It's unbelievable. Jim Harbaugh, if he ever decides to come back in college football, which he's not going to, obviously, coaching the Chargers, they put a penalty on him. He can't come back. Can't come back till 2028 without conduct to a school for penalty because of COVID-19 contacts. When every coach in the country, I'm assuming, had contacts with recruits during COVID-19 for $13 hamburger. Schools can give kids 18-year-old Lamborghinis like it's candy. But, this is all a witch hunt. The NCAA, to me, is a sham. Failed leadership blocks student athletes from profiting from their NIL for decades. The NCAA cheered as Leah Thomas stood on a podium and got a trophy meant for female swimmers. They let Juwan Howard come back and coach since he slapped another coach in the face. Jim Harbaugh had illegal contact supposedly with recruits, but we're going to go ahead and not let him come back. And if he does, the school that is going to hire him has a penalty. Jim Harbaugh's a good family man, good character, integrity, loves the players. Do we want a guy out of Jim Harbaugh's stature out of college? I say no, hell no. The game needs more Jim Harbaughs. And for anyone out there that thinks Michigan's title was tainted, they defeated Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, Penn State, ran the ball 32 straight times. There's your play call that you know. Ohio State, Bama, and Washington, and won the title. The NCAA can take a hike.
Nice. Well, how you doing?
Well, I just want to make a comment real quick on Todd's thing. I got a feeling Harbaugh may have out Calipari because he escaped into the pro ranks, whereas Calipari just keeps escaping back into the SEC. Anyway, but what I wanted to talk about was, now that my baseball team has kind of slipped off the edge and I'm about to not worry about it as much anymore because I don't know how much the chances are. I'm looking at football, and apparently in the fantasy football league, Brock Purdy and Jordan Love are the two big players everybody wants.
Yeah, Jordan Love's going to be my keeper in my fantasy keeper league, baby. I'm keeping Jordan Love. I'm loving the love. I'm doing well, but I'm especially ecstatic about August 2nd, 2025, when the Braves and the Reds will meet in the infield of Bristol Motor Speedway. I think this is awesome. Bristol Motor Speedway played host with Virginia Tech and Tennessee in a football game not too long ago in 2016. It's like 120,000, 130,000 people. It was awesome. It's just a spectacle. One of those cool places. You might not have the best seat in the house, but it's going to be pretty cool to see what they do in putting a baseball diamond in the infield of a NASCAR track. So, what's on tap for today's show? We have freelance dogs writer and news producer at WJHL in Johnson City, Tennessee, Ethan Offutt. He'll join us talking dogs football. Some big games to open up the season. Which ones should you look out for? And do you like the new NFL kickoff rule? I don't. Spoiler alert. but we have some Falcons talk as well. So we'll cover all that today, but let's kick things off with freelance dogs rider Ethan Offutt. The Dogs kick off their 2024 campaign versus Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers, rivalry renewed, in the Benz August 31st at noon. And Ethan joins us to talk about it. Ethan Offutt, again, freelance dogs rider, joining the show. Ethan, thanks for coming on. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good, guys. You know, you touched on the Braves and Reds. That's actually about 30 minutes away from where I work right now. I drive by the Bristol Speedway pretty often. If anybody has a chance to go, I recommend going. Huge stadium. Not only that, but the history within the stadium. I mean, you talk about Dale Earnhardt with NASCAR and the dirt races. It's a historic place to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely cool. I saw that news come across my timeline. I go, man, that should be interesting. Bristol Motor Speedway going outside the box with the ways they can make money at that arena. It's pretty cool. I'll kick this questioning off, man. Georgia, a lot of arrests in the offseason. We can save that drama for a different day. I want to simply talk about Ra Thomas. The loss of Ra to me is going to be pretty well known throughout the season. Georgia's going to have to rely on a lot of young guys. Your thoughts on the effect of the loss on the wide receivers room of Ra Thomas?
Yeah, so with Ra or Thomas, whichever you prefer to call him, I like to call him Ra. But with Ra, he actually last off season he got in trouble for a similar thing when transferring in from, I believe, Texas A&M,
Mississippi State, but
Mississippi State. Yeah, similar color. Thank you for correcting me. But yeah, so he had similar issues last year, and you know it's good of Kirby Smart to give him a second chance, but he wasted his second chance, and now you're going to have guys like newcomers, really is what I'm looking at. You're going to have guys like Colby Young, who's going to be a senior out of Miami, and he has been a baller. I mean, he has averaged 5 touchdowns in the 2 seasons he's played down there at South Beach, and also 12 yards per catch. If you go to Ra-Ra's stats from last year, the biggest stat he had was 16 yards per catch. He only had 338 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. So if you want to look at the big plays, you go turn to London Humphreys, who had 20 yards per catch over at Vanderbilt last year. You also look at Sokovie White, who could be filling in a little bit of Ladd McConkey's shoes with the explosive route running that is just, honestly, it's so raw coming out of Cass High School. He's going to be an exceptional player. And then I also sit here and I look at Dylan Bell, who's returning, Dominic Lovett, who's returning, and you got a couple other pieces who are starting to make their names known. I think the receiver room will be just fine with the subtraction of Ra Thomas.
Larry, Todd, next, whoever wants to go.
Hey, Ethan, you mentioned Sokovie White. We saw his entire high school career as Adairsville High School and Cass High Schools are rivals here. And you saw what he was able to do in the spring game, you know, getting separation and using that elite speed. I think what you mentioned earlier is him filling in that Ladd McConkey role. I think it's going to be huge. But I think just the overall offensive versatility from what the Dogs are going to be able to do is going to be different this year than it has been in years past because of the running back room. And I believe the running back room is going to be, for me, my aspect and what I look at it as is going to be similar to the year. Now, don't put this on me, Todd, because I know you will here in a minute, but I think it's going to be very similar to the year that Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, and Sony Michel were the 3-headed monster in the backfield. And I think you're going to see a replay of that this year with the running back room that the Dogs have.
You know, I agree with you, Larry. I was thinking that yesterday and today, as I was doing my research for the show and everything, and I'm just looking, and Branson Robinson and Roderick Robinson, they're both, I mean, easily just, they could go play and fight in the UFC and they'll look like they belong just because of their body muscle. I mean, they're strong dudes, and they're going to be the bruising backs that Nick Chubb and really Todd Gurley was at the same time. But then you go turn the page and you got ETN and you got Nate Frazier, which Nate Frazier, he's a freshman out of California, but this dude's nasty. I mean, he's giving me the same hype, and you said don't put it on me also, but he's giving me the same hype as Nick Chubb's freshman year. I mean, he's big with big quads, and he runs quick. And not only does he run quick, he's got a twitch. I mean, when you watch his juke moves, his spin moves, he's twitchy. So it's really could be a four-headed monster this season, whereas last season I was saying a two-headed monster with Kendall Milton and Dejon Edwards. You got more depth this year. Excuse me.
You're listening to Ethan Offutt right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can catch Ethan on the X at Ethan Offutt. That's ETHANOFFUTT84. That's on X. Todd, go ahead, buddy.
Hey, Ethan, I'm going to switch over to the other side of the football. I really want to know where the defensive line push is going to come from. Kirby Smart wants to get a little more push on his on the defensive line, especially in the interior. That's been somewhat of a problem. I know Georgia's got some capable players, but he would like to see an interior defensive lineman affect the quarterback more. They do have nastier Stackhouse and defensive tackle. He had eight career sacks last year for loss among his around 69, 70 stops. Where else are they going to get the help? Because that's a concern. All these games are one up front, especially on that defensive side of the ball, and especially in the SEC, arguably the best conference year in and year out. And the SEC produces the best defensive linemen in the country year in and year out, along with Michigan and Ohio State. Where do you see Georgia go to answer that, to answer their problem there on that interior defensive line?
That's actually a great question, and I was thinking the same thing doing the research. I personally didn't know where they might turn. There's definitely depth pieces there. They're very young depth pieces that hasn't gotten a lot of run in game. And I think what also kills this interior defensive line is that you're getting double teamed, triple teamed almost every single play because you play 3 down linemen. And then on top of that, opposing offenses are getting the ball out around 2.5, 2.3 3 seconds per snap, whereas Georgia's offense, and whenever these offenses go play a different defense, they're getting it out 3.3, 3.5 seconds per snap. So they're getting that ball out a whole lot quicker, which does not help your big guys who are sitting here getting double teamed. Now, I do want to say that moving Michael Williams from his outside linebacker role to more of an edge role will open up the interior depth a little bit because you haven't had that edge player within the last couple of years. But I think it's going to be a big experience year for this defense. I think they'll be good with Glenn Schumann at the helm, still leading the defense. But, I mean, you turn to the secondary, you're going to have probably a freshman starting at cornerback and a freshman starting at safety with KJ Bolden and Ellis Robinson. So it's going to be a young defense, but it's going to be also Malachi Starks and Smeal Mondon stepping up as leaders and the older guys of that room to get everybody in line.
Yeah, Smile.
Hey, Ethan, can I add one thing here? Hang on a second. I want to add one thing. You mentioned Michael Williams, and he's listed as the DN, but I believe he's gonna double a little bit and stand up and play that outside linebacker position. Do you think that also?
Yes, I do, and thank you for correcting me on that. But I do agree with you. From what I've heard from sources inside of the building is that he is already transitioned into more of that stand-up role. I can't think of a name right now. Nolan Smith, honestly, is the best name I could think of. He played more of that stand-up role when he was in Athens. I would expect not Nolan Smith production, but a Michael Williams version of that Nolan Smith role.
It's going to be interesting down the stretch what what the Dogs do on that with that young but talented defense, Ethan. I'm going to flip back over. You don't replace a Brock Bowers, but Georgia has pretty good help. They got Oscar Delt, Jurjevich, the transfer from Stanford, and Lawson Lucky, who was one of the best two tight ends, 2 years ago? And he was top one or top two, and Georgia's gotten the top two tight ends, 4 or 5 years in a row, maybe even longer than that. But your comments on the tight end situation, just how deep is Georgia at that position?
Yeah, so please excuse the train going by outside of my apartment right now.
Didn't even hear it.
But but the tight end room, it is a lot of honestly inexperienced guys again. Oscar Delp really didn't get his role into that position until last year came around, and he morphed his body to play Darnell Washington. Now, what I've heard from fall camp so far this year is that he's kind of lost that weight, as well as Lawson Lucky, to become those elite route runners that they were in high school. But not only that, their blocking capabilities are just as good as they were last year. So it's like you've gotten the good to great, and now you're making the great even better. And that's a good thing for those two players. You mentioned Benjamin Jurasek. I think he will play more of a down end blocking tight end because he's a big body. I mean, I've heard reports coming out of fall camp from the two open practices they've had, and he's really just a big body. There's no way of moving around it. There's no standout athletic points other than him being able to just outman somebody to get the football. But I think where people forget in this tight end room is that we have Pierce Spurlin as well, and then a bunch of young freshmen who have came in as 2 5-stars. I know one's Jaden Riddell, and then we have 3-star and Colton Heinrich. They're both solid players within their own respects. So I think where you start to look there is, did you build too much depth? Will guys transfer out? And that'll be interesting in the next coming years, but I think this year they'll be just okay.
You mentioned Ethan just being okay. Just a second. This is going to be a little different, the tight end room, because Bowers was really the focus last year. He was the guy,
yeah.
And now they're going to have to replace the guy with probably several guys, and it's going to definitely redefine that tight end room and the way and Georgia's offense and the way that the quarterback's going to distribute the ball and Carson Beck. I could definitely see a little bit more Georgia relying a little bit more on that running game this season than that easy dump off to the tight end. Your thoughts on that? I just wanted to. It was kind of went with a question, so I thought I'd go ahead and get that in.
No, you're all good. I do agree. I think they will lean a little bit more on the run game this year. But if you look last year when, Mike Bobo took over, the offense started to implement a lot of motion. And whether it was from the slot, whether it was from the tight end, the X receiver, whoever it was getting motioned, it opens up this defense. One way or another, this defense will have to shift its coverage in order to match this motioning receiver. That gives Carson Beck that one extra pre-read snap that he needs to be able to – he kills the zone defense personally. He can read the crap out of the zone. I think where he struggles a little bit is his vocality with things. And Kirby Smart and Tate Ratledge have both talked about this over the summer and this fall, is wanting him to become more of a vocal leader. And I think that's where this offense will thrive or fall this year, is who their leader will be and will they rally behind him. And I think Carson Beck can do it, but he has to become more vocal, more energized, and almost the quarterback arrogance you see from Peyton Manning or Nico Iamaleava.
So you can see my dog Ringo has made an appearance in the show.
It's okay, JJ. Wrong dog.
Yeah.
Named after Keely Ringo himself in that pick six. All right, boy. Oh. Larry, go ahead, buddy.
No, you're good, man. You know, you mentioned Carson Beck, and I think him having another year at the helm and being comfortable and knowing that he's a leader with nobody else threatening to take his job is going to help. But here is the one aspect of the 2024 Georgia program that I don't think a lot of people are taking into consideration. This is probably going to be the toughest schedule that they've had in the last 6 or 7 years easily, you know,
Yep.
and nobody really has said, you know, you got to play Texas, you've got to play Alabama. You know, that's the only time you really seen Alabama is SEC title games. You
Yep.
know, the question I really want to pose to you is, how ready do you feel this Georgia team is to go through this gauntlet of a schedule that they have this season?
Yeah, and I mean, just to add on to how hard it is, like you mentioned, not only do they play those teams, they play them at Texas, they play them at Bama, they also play at Kentucky this year, which I'll touch on them in a second. But I think Georgia will be prepared. I think the biggest question mark on their schedule really is how will they prepare for Austin, Texas? Because I mean, Texas and Steve Sarkisian, they're really, I think they're back. Honestly, I don't like saying teams are back, especially with Texas and USC, but Steve Sarkisian has them back. And this new look, they have a new look wide receiver room, but I think they're just as lethal. I mean, you have Ryan Wingo, a Georgia high school product, and then you just get a Bama guy and Xavier Worthy. Or excuse me, not Xavier Worthy, but
Bond.
mine's
Isaiah
but
Bond.
Isaiah Bond. Yes, thank you. But yeah, I think they'll be prepared because of the way Kirby Smart runs practices. I think it's going to be more of a mental fortitude. Will you be able to hold your preparedness, hold your confidence all the way through this game, which when they went to Tennessee last year, they struggled a little bit with, but they were able to come out with the win. Another game I have circled, though, was Kentucky, as I mentioned earlier. They have Brock Vandegrift, who's a Georgia transfer. They have Jamon Dumas-Johnson, who's a Georgia transfer. And then you have to go out to Lexington and play in Lexington. And, I mean, people really don't give Kentucky enough credit. The stadium gets loud. And when you have to go play there in the cold, I played in Kentucky. It's awful. Those Georgia boys will not be ready for the cold.
It's going to be interesting moving forward. No divisions in the SEC this year. Ethan, who do you got in your preseason SEC title game, man? I have a shocker. I got the Dogs in Missouri. I think Missouri's
Really?
going to benefit from a lighter SEC schedule, not having to face Georgia. I think they miss Ole Miss. They get Bama on the road. Every other game they have that's pretty big is at home. Como gets pretty excited too. Who do you got in the SEC title game?
You know, you bring up Ole Miss, which kind of takes me back to the last question. Georgia also has to play at Ole Miss, so that'll be another kicker to their tough schedule. But who do I have in the title game? You know, Missouri could sneak in there. You mentioned a easier schedule for them this year, avoiding a lot of those tough SEC East opponents. I do agree. I think depending on how Georgia fares through Texas and Bama, they will find their way into the SEC championship game. And, you know, I think the same could be said really for Texas. And if they're able to fare well through their schedule, I could see them finding their way to the championship game as well.
And I'll follow up. 12-team playoff obviously is in full effect. How many SEC teams do you see getting in? I think 3 or 4 is a real possibility, depending on how deep and how good it is. Maybe 5, but I think 3 or 4 is a strong possibility this year.
I don't know about 5. I really don't know about 5.
There ain't 5 getting in. That's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, because I do have to respect the Big Ten now. I mean, they have Ohio State, they have Oregon. I'm not counting USC. They're not back yet. But I agree with Larry. I think three is a good number. I think
Yep.
Georgia will probably find its way in. It'll be either Texas or Bama for the second spot. And then the third spot's really where I start to look. And you mentioned Missouri. I think they get in just because of an easy schedule, but they also have a lot of key returners. They have Luther Burden, who is a top 5 wide receiver in the nation.
Yep.
Brady Cook, who's a top 15 quarterback in the nation. A strong defense that's returning. But then you also turn the page to the Volunteers. Nico Yamaleva is a very
Yeah.
good quarterback. They have Mike Matthews, who's an incoming freshman out of Parkview, to play wide receiver, and then a bunch of young speed weapons at that position. And then you can turn to the page to their defense. They have what many people are considering the number 1 overall pick at edge, which I don't think he'll go number 1, but he is a very great player nonetheless. And I start to look at Tennessee. I also start to look at Kentucky. So I think 3 teams is a good number to get in. I think it all just depends on injuries and how people fare through their schedule.
Yeah, like I said,
You know,
anywhere from
Ethan,
3 to 5. I don't
JJ,
think
you
it's
were
crazy. I don't. The depth of the SEC is huge, and
you're
if
not
if
getting
the Big
5.
Ten cannibalizes itself, like I think it will, it's
No
such a
way.
deep conference, and there's so many teams in it. I think they may play their way out of a couple playoff spots. I just do. I think it's going to be really deep in the SEC this year. I think you could see 2 from the East and 2 from the West go very easily. Todd, go ahead.
JJ, you're right about schedule matters. You know, we talked about that off the air, and I want to say that to all of you. JJ's right about one thing. Schedule matters. And when I look at a schedule, if you don't mind me saying, gentlemen, that Alabama LSU game is going to be huge because LSU and Alabama, they have schedules, especially LSU, that is also manageable. Excuse me, they don't play Georgia. They do play Bama. They get Oklahoma, Bama at home. They get Ole Miss at home. They get USC in Vegas. The LSU would be my sleeper. Like, I don't think it's ever a sleeper, but JJ's big on Missouri. I would be just as big on LSU. And you surely can't count out Alabama and Kalen DeBoer, the job that they've already done. And if Jalen Milroe can throw the ball much better this year, and of course, a lot of ifs here. We said about ifs last week. Jam Miller's a really good back for Alabama. They're going to be heard from. I think the SEC, honestly, and college football, honestly, is as wide open it gets. I think there's not a ghost chance in hell that the SEC will get 5, maybe 4. But I'm with Larry. They'll probably get 3 because the Big Ten's going to get 3, and that's half the field right there.
It's going to be an interesting football season, guys. You're listening to Ethan Offutt right here on ATL Prime Sports. You can find Ethan on X at Ethan Offutt84. Larry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm good. I was just scratching my nose right there while you were talking. I'm kind of like with everybody else, man. Texas is still loaded. They're absolutely loaded. And with Quinn Ewers still being a Heisman Trophy hopeful, you know, the SEC has got half of the buckets of Heisman Trophy hopefuls in Carson Beck and Missouri's quarterback. Can't think of his name.
Cook.
Yeah, Cook. I couldn't think of it, but it just slipped my head. You know, and Ewers, you know, Ole Miss's quarterback is in there too. You know, he's gonna have something to say with what's going on. It's just so deep. And you know, everybody's still gonna talk about Ohio State and Michigan up north. You know, who knows what's gonna come out of the Big 12. But at the end of the day, I don't see even in the best scenario to where any of those are going to be as good and as deep as what Texas is going to be. My pick is still going to be Texas and Georgia.
Yeah, well,
that's interesting. I was going to say that's interesting, Larry, because Texas is going to play at Michigan in week 2. Texas, when I look at a team, and JJ, you and I agree with this, we look at returners on defense. Texas has got 7 of them. We all know, Ethan, the defense wins championships. So this is really going to be interesting because the depth of the SEC, this is a big jump going from the Big 12 to the SEC in terms of depth. You know, in the Big 12, there's gaps where you don't have to play your best every week and you can get away with it. Well, as they say down here in the Southeast in the Man's Conference, you can't get away from that. And I think the depth of the SEC is going to get Texas and catch up with them. Can they play consistently week in and week out at a top level?
So here, sorry to interject there, but
No, go ahead.
here's where I think we need. Here's where I think we need to flip the page as far as the newcomers. I really don't think Brent Venables is going to last at Oklahoma through the SEC.
Wow.
I think his recruiting capabilities, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is excused for the train again. But I think his recruiting capabilities on the defensive side of the ball will keep him in an SEC role for 2, maybe a third year, but 2 years for sure. I don't think he's going to get that offense in a good enough standpoint to be able to compete at an SEC level. I mean, he lost 4 games almost every year at Oklahoma when they were in the Big 12 when he took over. I believe in Brent Venables as a coordinator and a recruiter, not as a head coach.
He's only been at Oklahoma for 2 years. He's 16-10. The first year was a rebuilding year. Last year they lost 3 games. But you're right, the depth of the SEC is really going to test Oklahoma. And, you know, you look at the schedule, who they're going to play. I mean, yeah, they'll be undefeated probably the first 3, but they'll play Tennessee, at Auburn versus Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Bama, and LSU. That's a brutal road for a team last year who played a much easier schedule in West Virginia, BYU, TCU, Arizona, Kansas, and the likes. This is where it's going to, the rubber will meet the road for Oklahoma too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That guys, any final thoughts for Ethan before we let him go? And
no, we're good.
Wayne, anything?
No.
Guys, this is again Ethan Offutt. You can find Ethan on X at Ethan Offutt 84. Ethan, thanks for joining us, my friend, and we'll have to check in with you in a couple weeks and see how the dogs are doing, man.
Oh yeah, thank you guys for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and go Dogs.
All right.
Go Dogs. I like that. That's the way to end it right there, man. Again, Ethan Offutt. You can find him on Twitter at Ethan Offutt 84. Guys, we're going to stick with the college football thing. Only 17 days until toe meets leather for college football. Week 0 comes out the gates swinging with the conference battle overseas. And FSU and Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. What are some other big games you guys are looking forward to this upcoming season? And, boy, I tell you, that one's going to be fun to watch in Week 0. Conference foes. Georgia Tech finishing the season the way they did with the bowl win last year. I think that is a great way to open up college football, and that is one of my number 1 games I had circled on the calendar. Is I think FSU, guys, this has upset special written all over it for me. 13-0, they got their rings, and Keon Coleman says, we weren't playing. We played a bunch of wish-I-coulds. I'm not Tiger Woods and this and that. And he's talking about the dogs and this and that. Guys, let me tell you something. 13-0 is 13-0. That's last year. This is this year. Are they going to carry that mentality of we should have been there into this game and get beat? Or are they going to go, hey, this is a new season, new campaign. Let's wipe last year clean and let's play. And I think a distraction from last year with some of those players that remained, DJ Hughes back in the ACC, this is a huge game, and the local twist on it makes it that much better. So that's my number 1 game to look out forward to in the season right now. And I know there's other games. I could have put Georgia, Texas, and this and that, but we're having fun here. So, guys, give me some big games that you're looking forward to. Larry, go ahead.
Oh man, I'm always looking to rivalries, always about rivalries. And this year, rivalries with just really, I know you'll say a power four, but it's really only a power three conference this year. The matchups between the Ohio States and Michigans, the Penn States and Ohio States and Michigans, Georgia and Alabama and Texas, those rich ones that you're not going used to seeing that you get to see this year. Those matter. But, I want to see how Oregon fares playing a different schedule with all the travel, with all the nuances that are going to come with them playing the majority of their opponents 2,000, 3,000 miles away. I want to see how Dan Lanning coaches that squad up to be able to handle that, especially with the loss of Bo Nix and a huge transfer portal recruiting class. I want to see that. I want to see if DJ Uiagalelei is going to be the hype train that everybody says he is, or if he's going to continue to just be an average quarterback with a big name. I want to see Brady Cook over there in Missouri. I want to see if he can lead a team of the Missouri Tigers on to an SEC championship bid. I like the individual story about the team that compiles with the matchup just as much as I do the big time matchup. I still want to see the Red River Shootout. Is it going to be just as powerful as an SEC rivalry as it was in the Big 12? Those are the things that I'm going to be paying attention to. But I'm going to really be paying attention to the Georgia Clemson game to start it off with, because that's going to tell me a lot about both teams, Georgia and Clemson. Is Dabo really going to be on his way out after this? Because he's going to be on the hot seat because he refuses to adapt with the times. He just will not. How long will Clemson's fan base and alumni allow that to continue to go on? Who knows? But that's what's all about. It's just college game day on Saturday mornings, all the rivalry games, everything that comes along with the nuances of college football. And I'm so ready for it, gentlemen.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. Tim Brando posted a tweet today with Lee Corso. I think he turned 89 today or something like that. I'm all for the headgear picks, baby. Leave them on there. Wayne, we haven't mentioned anything in a while. What are some games you're looking forward to earlier this season?
Well, currently the only game that I'm really interested in is going to be Memphis at Florida State, September 14th. Former coach Mike Norvell down at Florida State, and many people don't know this, but Florida State used to be in the same conference as Memphis, so that's the game that I'm mostly interested in. The rest of them are going to be all right, but one thing I will tell you is I'm not falling for the South Carolina Gamecocks hype this year.
Thank you.
Noted. Todd, what you got?
Noted. You know what, JJ? Larry said that so well about the rivalry games. I want to touch on 2 points, one from him and one from you. I like what he said about Oregon and the travel. But also, JJ, you and I talked about this off the air. Oregon defensively, they gave up 30 to Texas Tech. They gave up 36 to Washington. They gave up the upper 20s to Washington State. They gave up almost 30 to USC. They're going to play in a better conference this year. Their defense is going to have to get better in order for them to win the Big Ten. And, when you look at them, they've got 4 guys returning on defense. So we're going to see how they match up quickly in the Big Ten, because these teams in the Big Ten have better offense and defensive lines than they did in the Pac-12. Second point, Mike Norvell, Florida State. They have a super talented roster, very well coached by him. He's a brilliant offensive mind, and Florida State has got a bevy of running backs. They have a good offensive line. You're going to see them rely on that running game and get it going. And Lucas was a really good player. Roydell Williams is a really good player for Florida State. They're going to, run the football and give DJ a chance to get settled in, because that game against Georgia Tech, we've always mentioned, schedule matters, and the schedule says game 1 in a conference game in Dublin where everything is as green as you'll ever see it, especially the grass. How are they going to react from a year ago? I don't believe in the stuff from a year ago. How are they going to play? Because you can throw all the other stuff they did out a year ago when the loss against Georgia and why they didn't make it in. This is a completely different team and a completely different year. Georgia Tech, they've got some momentum, and from a year ago, King's a good quarterback. So, Florida State defense will be tested. I think that's an interesting game. The third and last point, the game, the rubber that meets the road is Miami and Mario Cristobal, 12-13 in 2 years, versus Billy Napier, 11-14 in 2 years. The loser in this game is going to feel some sunshine heat, and it's not going to be the glorious Florida sunshine. It's going to be heat from the alumni and the donors.
Yeah. Ooh, I got to get off the chair. It's a hot seat right here. Loser of that game might be
it's
out.
going to burn.
Yeah.
One of their asses is going to be burned at the end of the first week. I hate to say it, but a lot of pressure is going to be on those coaches.
Yeah, it's win now for both coaches. Billy Napier, obviously, with the offseason with Georgia's new quarterback, and I'm forgetting his name, transferred from Arizona State, is suing their rival, the Florida Gators. So there's a whole lot of Florida storylines in that one. Miami, Florida was one of mine. Cam Ward transferred from Washington State to Miami, trying to be the saving grace for Cristobal. USC, LSU you mentioned. Georgia, Texas was mentioned. It's a new conference battle. And I'm doing 2 other conference battles. Ohio State and Oregon's another one. And look, I know this is random, but that's exactly why I'm looking forward to this college football season. Folks, SMU and Stanford, it's a bleeping conference game. That's a conference football game. That's an ACC football game. And that is crazy. So that's how crazy the college football season is going to be, guys. We've all had some great points there. Let's move from college football to the pros. And, boy, the Bears and Texans kicked off the NFL preseason with the Hall of Fame game last week. The Falcons kick off their preseason Friday night in Miami at 7 p.m. Let's talk some NFL. I already mentioned at the beginning of the show, I do not like the new kickoff rule. Guys, what do you say? Larry, I see you rolling your head.
They say, man, I like
think
it.
This is a clown show.
Man, I'm going to tell you why I like it.
You like it?
I do like it. And I'm going to tell you why. It's going to sound crazy, but here's why I like it. For at least the last 5, maybe even 6, you probably could even stretch it out to 7 years, the kickoff in the NFL has been literally a glorified watch it go over my head into the end zone and watch the other team's special teams just run into the end zone while the TV broadcast breaks away into a commercial break or pans a crowd.
Yeah.
No,
Very true.
Long gone are the days of the Devin Hesters, of the Deion Sanders, of the perennial kickoff return specialist that you knew could break it at any given time. It was just like, let's spot it over, take it over to 25, and let's go. This, I believe, is going to cause special teams coordinators to really have to coach the play now, because you could break it at any given time because it gives your returners the opportunity to do some things instead of just trying to take it and run away and then get smacked way before the 20-yard line or the 25-yard line. It gives another wrinkle to something that gives an opportunity for people who are electric with speed to be game changers. That's why I like it so much.
Todd, your thoughts?
We had 4 kickoffs for a return for a touchdown a year ago. I kind of like what Larry said. It's new and different. But I tell you, when I saw it, I had to adjust my 4 eyes on the TV, and I just said, oh, my gosh, this is just too big of a change for me. But we might not even get a return for a touchdown this year. I just think, the teams aren't really going to – they're not going to kick it deep, like Larry said, over the head, and we're going to get touchback, because the defenses don't want to give up 10 yards and have the ball start at the 30. Excuse me. But you're going to see a lot of pooch kicks. You're going to see a lot of pop-ups. And even though with the rules, the team's still going to end up speed to be able to get onto the ball and get close enough to the ball and avoid a big return. It's going to be different. I really want to see it live in a regular season game before I comment anymore. But when I looked at it first, I thought, what are we doing here as a society? There's just too many changes for me.
Yeah, no, it's a big no for me. I saw enough in week one. You get it out of here. The NFL owners got one more meeting before the season, and they could just see you later. Let's go back to normal. And I hope.
I don't think that's happening.
And here's the deal: it's a clown show right now. Mainly because I don't think the coaches want to show their hand on the strategy for the season. So I'm hoping that has something to do with it. And I will revert to what Todd said. I'm going to cast full judgment on week one of the season. But right now, early reaction, I will react. I do not like it. One, it's way too far away from the original kickoff rules that I enjoyed as a fan. Two, players on the kickoff return team seem to have trouble getting into position to block because they don't have the hang time anymore. They cannot leave until their guy catches the football. So which means, in my opinion, as a defender, in the very first one, they allowed a guy to go early, and he got there and he made the tackle. The very first kickoff ever of the new rule, the guy that first moved on defense, which technically was an illegal movement because you're not supposed to move till you catch the ball, and this isn't like baseball where you can kind of see the guy catch it and there's no one trying to take your head off and you can run on home. You can't really see when the guy catches the ball. So that's number two. I don't really like that. The receiving team doesn't have a good opportunity to get in blocking position. And two, basically the returner's running into a wall of defenders because they can't get back to block. And then number three, what I thought was the craziest part, well, let's just give the kickoff team a 12th man to hold the football. And then once the ball's kicked, he'll just grab the tee and jog on off to the sideline. I do not like that. Not one bit. Not one bit do I like that.
We need each team to have a retriever dog to go out there and get that tee.
Yeah, like the Ole Miss dog has, like Lane Kiffin's dog. Just go get the tee, I guess. But no.
What about Buddy the dog in that movie, JJ? What about Buddy the dog in that movie where he could play football and play hockey?
Hey, I'll train Ringo to do it. How about that? No, but look, I will refrain full judgment until week one. But right now, I don't like it. And mainly, like I said, I just do think that every coach right now knows what's going down. And they're like, they either love it or they hate it. And there's going to be some strategist that's going to be like, all right, this is going to be great. And then there's going to be some guys. This is going to be one thing that it will do is it will show athleticism of kickers because they're going to put it in the corner. They're going to sky kick it. They're going to line drive boot it, squib kick it. As long as it lands in the landing zone and stops, it doesn't matter. So I'm anxious to see what that comes out. But right now, no, I don't like it. Holding the tee, running off. Then one guy was like excited. He like waved to his mom in the crowd or something. Forgets to pick up the tee, so the tee's just laying there. I didn't like it, but we will see. Guys, that's all fun. Wayne, what do you think of the new rule, man?
Well, didn't think I was going to be a fan of the pitch clock, but I ended up being one. So I'm going to have to wait and see, like you, see how this works out. But it'll be interesting if there's a team out there that just decides to onside kick every time.
That would be
could work out. It could work out.
That's a really good point, Wayne, because I'm telling you, it's going to show athleticism to the kickers. But right now, I just think it's funny, and I'm kind of having to laugh with it. But, guys, let's move on. Let's talk a little dirty. Go ahead, Wayne.
I said we'll all be watching.
So
don't they say, gentlemen, that the onside kick will be basically? I mean, I don't know if teams will really try it with this. I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting deal. The onside kick that he brought it up. I mean, hardly anybody tried it before. Are they going to try it more now?
I'm not sure. I don't know if they approved it. You guys maybe. Do you have to announce you're doing an onside kick now?
I hadn't heard that.
I can't remember. I
haven't heard that neither.
Rules discussed.
What's the difference between an onside kick and a bad kick, though? You just go out there and go, "Oh, sorry, I kicked it bad. My fault. My bad."
Well,
Sorry,
considering
coach.
what was taking place in the Hall of Fame game, it ain't much.
Right.
Wayne, you do have a point. I do think that these coaches are holding their cards in their back pocket until week one. And I think you're going to see some crazy stuff week one on the kickoff. So
hey,
we'll have
BJ, I got the rule.
We'll unwind it together. Say that again, Todd.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I have the rule. Onside kicks are now limited to the fourth quarter. They must be declared by the kicking team.
Yep.
Yeah,
That means
but you don't
they're
have
not
to
going to get any onside kicks unless it's desperation and they have
You
to
know
do
what's
it because
crazy
that's
about
what they're
that?
down to.
You know what's crazy about that? That would have basically allowed Peyton Manning to win another Super Bowl because Sean Payton wouldn't have been allowed to kick that onside kick at the start of the third quarter.
Yeah, this is why I'm starting to hate this the more conversation we have about it. I mean, but I'm willing to give it a try, but the onside kick portion, I think it's batshit crazy.
I love that word. All right, guys. We're talking Falcons here. First preseason game Friday night, 7 p.m. They've had joint practices. That's really where you'll see the most action. Friday night's going to be really just put on the pads and do a walkthrough with the pads on and the lights on for some money for the old owners. But what are you looking forward to in the Falcons' first preseason game? Guys, I'll start this one off. To me, it's the new look Falcons offense with Zach Robinson, beyond Robinson. See what these guys do. I know most of them probably aren't going to play, but you will get to see what the Falcons are trying to do on offense versus the last couple of years with Arthur Smith. So that's number one. And I would like to see if Eddie Goldman gets in and plays. And those are the two biggest things I'm looking out for, too, because I've said this the last couple of years. If Eddie Goldman can play and he's healthy, that's a real big piece for the Atlanta Falcons defense. So those are my two things I'm looking out for. Wayne, what say you, buddy?
I'm sorry. I'm so far away from NFL right now, and I know I shouldn't be because this Friday they're playing down in Miami, but I don't know, man.
Hey, you don't know what you're looking forward to. I like that too.
I'm more focused on whether the Rangers are going to be able to do something or not. And then once I've given up on them, then I'll focus more on football. But, right now, that's about all I'm really worried about.
If they get in, that's all that matters.
Right.
Larry,
If they get in, I won't be paying too much more attention to football. But if they don't get in or if they're way outside, then it'll be all football at that point.
Larry,
what
you looking forward to in the first
I understand, Wayne. I understand. I feel the same about my Atlanta Braves, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm looking forward mostly. I don't have any worries about the Atlanta Falcon offense. 2 levels deep, I don't have any concerns at all.
Yeah.
I want to see the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary. I want to see the Falcons defense. I want to see if Arnold Ebiketie is going to make the next step up. I want to see if Zach Harrison can come through in the clutch and be the edge rusher that we need him to be. I want to see Troy Anderson bounce back from injury. I want to see the things that David Onyemata come back from injury. I want to see Ruka see how he feels in the middle, next to some big-time people there with Grady and Onyemata there with him. I want to see the secondary and see if Clark Phillips can be that number 2 corner that the Falcons need for him to be. I want to see, and you probably won't see Jesse Bates for the series, if that. But I want to see if he still looks that all-pro leader in the safety position that he's going to be. I want to see TQ Graham, man. I want to see if he's going to come through and shine in a defensive role. But I want to see the Falcons defense on all 3 levels act like they're going to be able to stop and keep people under 21 points a game. Because if that happens, I'm telling y'all, it's an 11-win season. Point blank, period.
Todd, what you got for the first Falcons preseason game, buddy?
Extra sleep. Let's just a minute. The preseason games don't mean a thing. It's really extra sleep. Nobody really shows anything. It's all pretty vanilla. The only thing you want to see is the younger guys, if you're going to watch the game, is see who some of the younger guys that were drafted in the later rounds, are they going to make the team? Is there a free agent that's left on? Is there a potential, guy they might get from the street, an undrafted free agent? Does somebody step up out of nowhere and make the team? Other than that, these preseason games mean little. Everybody thought the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to be gangbusters a year ago, coming out, 4-0 in the preseason, pants the ball all over the place, run around all over the place. Well, the ones played the ones, and the Steelers struggled until the latter part of the season. This absolutely means nothing. I'm with Wayne. I want to see what I'm more interested right now in the baseball season because they're actually playing games that COUNT that count.
Yeah, it's well said. I think one thing, keeping it Falcons related, I do want to see Michael Penix. He's going to throw the ball, the left-handed quarterback, see what he does with these young wide receivers, and see if he can play himself into a controversy. That's what everybody's going to say if he plays
Too
good.
late.
But it's all for fun right now. It's all to see what you got, see what players are making the team, and that is the best thing to look out for. Is what guys are going to stand out and say, hey, that could be our 53rd guy. Maybe that could be our return guy. We saw Ray McLeod come over from the 49ers. He looking like he could be a return guy. So you're going to want to watch on the kickoffs and see if this kickoff rule evolves, if teams saw what the Hall of Fame had to offer and say, all right, we're going to do it this way. I think the evolution of the kickoff until week 1 is going to be always fun to watch in the preseason. But guys, that wraps up my thoughts on the Falcons. You guys want to have any final thoughts on Falcons or anything real quick before we go?
No injuries. Get away injury-free. Go on to the next one.
Yeah, that's always key in the preseason. I saw some Falcons news. It did look like Rondell Moore was carted off at Falcons training camp earlier this afternoon. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Early reports looked like it was a non-contact injury. So we'll have to keep up with Will McFadden and his Twitter for that news. But guys, that about wraps us up. Let's get into our final thoughts. I'll start it off. It's on most of the nation's mind right now. Freddie Freeman's son, Maximus, has been released from the hospital. He's going to have to learn how to walk, talk, and everything again. The name of the condition he has is extremely rare, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. I'm terrible with those. But my thoughts and prayers are with the Freeman family. Once a Brave, always a Brave. And Freddie, hey, we're praying for you here in Atlanta, buddy.
Yep,
That's
100%.
Guys, next one. Whoever goes, go.
All right. Well, I guess I'll go do my final thought is going to be on NASCAR. We got 4 more races till the playoff begins, and we got Bubba Wallace one step out looking in, and Ross Chastain trying to hang on to that last spot. So we'll see how that squares away and works out. But it's always tight times this time in NASCAR because people are doing everything they can to get into that playoff.
Yeah, that NASCAR playoff makes it really, really fun for fans. Larry, what you got?
The greatest Olympian basketball scorer of all time in the person of Easy Money Sniper, a.k.a. Durantula, a.k.a. the Slim Reaper, Kevin Durant. He is probably one of the arguably best offensive weapons that have ever come through the gifted sport of basketball. A 7-foot sharpshooter who can handle the ball like a point guard. KD's skills will never be unmatched. He will never have to worry about his place when he gets finished in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And the U.S. team are 2 games away from securing another gold medal. The one thing that I'm looking forward to is seeing how they coordinate with each other, and I want to see them boys play with all the heart that they have and come away on that podium and beat Nikola Jokic, the Joker, and them Serbians in the next game.
Todd, you got the final thought of the night, buddy.
Man, I am so tired of Braves fans and the writers and everyone making excuses why this team is not playing well, the injuries, this, that. The bottom line is every team in Major League Baseball has a ton of injuries. I'll give you one, the Dodgers. Yamamoto's on the 60-day DL. Mookie Betts has been on the DL. Blake Trini has been on the DL. Max Muncy's been on 60-day. Connie Edman was supposed to help from St. Louis on the 60-day. Walker Buehler's been on the IL, excuse me. He's been on it twice. Chris Taylor, Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, Tony Goslin, Clayton Kershaw, Jason Hayward, and Freddie Freeman, which you mentioned, JJ. Thank you for saying that. He has missed time, too. We all know reason why. Whatever the case is, in Atlanta's had a lot of injuries, but a lot of their players are not, despite the pitching being really good, they're not playing like they're capable, like the back of their baseball card says. Olsen, we could go on and on. We could name several players for Atlanta that are not playing like the back of the baseball card. And until they do, there should be no excuses. Even Brian Snicker came out yesterday and talked to the media and said, yes, we have injuries, but we have several guys not playing like the back of the baseball card. Olsen, Riley, yada, yada, yada. And here's another thing I heard today. You know, the absences from the coaches from a year ago. Ron Washington, Eric Young, hitter consultant Chipper Jones. I'm sorry, that has nothing, and I'll say it again, nothing to do with this season, because they're not coaching here. Coaches come, coaches go. Stop with the excuses. Pull up the big boy pants and do the best you can. And look, the season is not over. The Braves are not officially unburdened, but what has been. They can still do well in the playoffs. They have 4 excellent starting pitchers. If they pitch, catch the ball, and hit it the right time, they're still in this thing. It could go 2 ways. They could potentially win the division, or they could be on the playoffs altogether. That's the bottom line. Stop the crying. I'm out.
Todd's a long-winded final thought. I think Larry and I thought you were going to go a different direction when you said the Ron Washington and Eric Young. I thought it had a pretty big effect on the team. The third base coach does not send runners near as often as Ron Washington does.
That's true, but
anyway,
they don't have Ron
it's a good final thought. I don't think any Braves fans should pout and cry. Everybody has injuries, and this team still is pretty good on the pitching front, as Todd said. Folks, that wraps up our show. For Wayne in Memphis, Todd in Woodstock, Larry in Adairsville, I'm JJ in Lilburn. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you can get notified when we drop our latest content. And we'll see you next week, folks. 1 week closer to kickoff. Get you one.
Bye.